2,000 years ago, the volcano Vesuvius buried an ancient scroll. And now, for the first time, artificial intelligence has read it. What's written there is not just history, it's a dark warning about what is happening right now, in the year 2025. All over the world, AI is decoding texts once thought lost forever. And what they are finding is deeply disturbing, because the ancient predictions describe our time with frightening accuracy. Let's go back to the beginning of this story. Imagine the year 79 AD. Vesuvius wakes up like a real monster. Pompeii is slowly covered with ash. People have a few hours to try to escape. But the nearby city of Herculaneum dies in a completely different way. People there don't even understand what's happening. A giant wave of burning gas and stone races toward them at hurricane speed. The temperature is over 950 degrees Fahrenheit. Imagine an oven heated to the maximum, only 1,000 times worse. People burn instantly. In Herculaneum, there was an amazing library, the Villa of the Papyri. It belonged to one of the richest Romans, possibly even the father-in-law of Julius Caesar. Inside were hundreds of priceless scrolls filled with the wisdom of ancient philosophers. In just seconds, this entire treasure turned into black, fragile cylinders. They look like charred logs. Scientists have been finding these remains for centuries. But how can you read something that looks like a lump of coal? A single touch, and the ancient text turns to dust. And this is where artificial intelligence came in. In March 2023, a group of researchers decided to do the impossible. They announced the Vesuvius Challenge, with a prize of over $1 million. The goal sounded like science fiction, to read the scrolls without touching them at all. Scientists began scanning the burnt scrolls using special X-ray beams, micro-CT scanning. It's like creating thousands of extremely thin virtual slices of the scroll. Each slice shows tiny differences in material density. Then the AI stepped in. It was trained to see what humans can't, traces of ancient ink hidden inside what looks like stone. The machine learned to recognize the tiniest shades of gray in the X-ray images, to find patterns where our eyes only see chaos. And then something happened that changed everything. In October 2023, something incredible took place. A college student named Luke Ferreter became the first person in 2,000 years to read a word from the charred scroll. The word was simple: porphyros, which means purple in Greek, the color of power and kings. It was a real breakthrough. By early 2024, scientists had already decoded over 2,000 letters. It turned out the scroll was written by Philodemus, a famous ancient Greek philosopher. He usually wrote about how to find happiness and peace in life. But this scroll was different. Sources from the Vesuvius Challenge team say that among the usual philosophical thoughts, some terrifying predictions appeared. Philodemus wrote about a coming fire and ages of suppression, about a time when rulers would kill anyone who told the truth. One part was especially frightening. It spoke of strategic silence. The philosopher explained how leaders make people stay quiet, not with bans, but with fear. They create an atmosphere where telling the truth becomes deadly. In another place, he wrote about a cycle of smoke and renewal. Philodemus gave advice to the educated few on how to prepare for the moment when the light goes out forever and the world begins to cleanse itself. In other words, how to survive while the world burns in a hellish fire and is born again. Now here's the most important part. Philodemus died long before the eruption of Vesuvius. He had no idea the volcano would ever explode, so he wasn't writing about something that had already happened. He was somehow predicting the future with amazing accuracy. And the artificial intelligence reading these texts is finding the same pattern across the ancient world. Different civilizations, different times, but the same scenario repeats again and again. In December 2024, something happened that almost no one is talking about. New decoding algorithms found phrases in ancient Sumerian tablets that sound like descriptions of genetic engineering. Let's look at why this is so important. It might mean that everything we've been told about the beginning of civilization is completely wrong. 6,000 years ago in ancient Iraq, a mysterious culture appeared. They called themselves the black-headed people, and we now know them as the Sumerians. And this is where it gets truly strange. Normally, civilizations take thousands of years to develop, from hunting and gathering to writing, from tribes to cities. But the Sumerians seemed to skip all of that overnight. Imagine this. Yesterday there were only villages, and today there are huge city-states: Eridu, Uruk, Ur. Other peoples needed thousands of years to invent writing, create laws, and study the stars. But the Sumerians had all of this appear at once and immediately. The foundation of everything was simple clay. But the Sumerians saw something in it that no one else noticed. They fired clay into bricks and built entire cities. They shaped it into vessels and tokens for trade. But most importantly, they turned clay into humanity's memory by inventing cuneiform writing. For the first time in history, people were able to record their thoughts forever. Royal decrees, trade contracts, poems, entire stories. All of this could now outlive their creators by thousands of years. And when they began writing down numbers, they used a base 60 system. And we still live with this legacy today. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 360 degrees in a circle. But the deeper scholars studied these tablets, the more strange things they found. Among the usual records about grain and beer, texts suddenly appeared about advanced medicine and precise astronomy, technologies that were ahead of their time by thousands of years. Museums around the world hold tens of thousands of these tablets. Reading them used to be a nightmare. A single tablet could contain over 1,000 different signs, each meaning something different depending on the context. Scholars spent their entire lives learning to read them. But now artificial intelligence has changed everything. By 2023, teams from Tel Aviv and Ariel University made a real breakthrough. They created an AI that could translate Akkadian, the main language of cuneiform tablets, into English almost instantly. What used to take scholars years now takes only a few hours. And then something strange happened. Just as AI learned to translate with incredible accuracy, archaeologists began finding clay tablets in almost perfect condition, as if they had just been taken out of the kiln yesterday. Every symbol sharp and clear. In northern Iraq, at a site called Khirbet Kestan, they discovered a set of tablets from 1800 BCE, but scientists believe they are copies of even older texts. Around the same time, in Gursu, one of the oldest Sumerian cities, more than 200 untouched tablets were found. They had been stored in special containers coated with bitumen. By 2025, tools from the University of Würzburg had advanced even further. AI began to detect idioms, technical terms, and subtle meanings that human translators had missed for decades. And that's when the real discoveries began. In the Sumerian astronomical records were facts that amazed even modern scientists. Extremely precise planetary trajectories, solstice cycles, and, most incredibly, a description of how the Earth slightly wobbles as it spins. Our science only discovered this effect in the 20th century. It turns out the Sumerians were tracking cosmic cycles tens of thousands of years long. In medicine, they described antiseptics, treatments for wounds, and pulse diagnosis. They kept family health records as if they already understood genetics and how genes work. And then AI found texts that left scientists speechless. Detailed descriptions of copper and iron vessels in acidic solutions. These devices produced flowing power, trapped lightning, and invisible energy. This means the ancient Sumerians were describing electricity in detail. But the next discovery is even more shocking. There is a name almost no one knows, Enheduanna. Yet she may be one of the most important women in human history. Enheduanna was the daughter of Sargon of Akkad, one of the greatest kings of the ancient world. She served as high priestess of the moon goddess in the city of Ur, and she became the first poet in history whose name we still know. But these were not just religious songs. Enheduanna created an incredible blend of science, politics, and personal feelings, expressed in poetry of astonishing power. "Lady of all powers, light that shows the way," she wrote, "your fury is like a roaring storm." When artificial intelligence began to analyze the structure of her texts, it found strange patterns. Enheduanna wrote about cycles of destruction and renewal, about times when the sky changes its face and the earth forgets its laws. Her darkest lines were especially haunting. She predicted times when words turned to ash in the mouth, and the wise must learn to stay silent to survive. This doesn't sound like ordinary poetry. It sounds like a serious warning. And then AI stumbled upon the most shocking discovery, ancient texts about how humans appeared on our planet. The Sumerian tablets say it directly. Humanity was created artificially as a highly complex engineering project. According to their version, there was a rebellion in the heavens. The younger gods, the Igigi, were tired of hard labor and revolted. The higher gods, the Anunnaki, urgently looked for a replacement. So they decided to create a completely new being out of clay, adding to it a divine essence. The first human was named Adam. At first, the experiment failed. The humans were infertile and not very smart, but they were modified again and again until the desired result was achieved. AI is finding amazing phrases in these ancient texts: mixing of essences, prototype performance, reproductive ability. This doesn't sound like a myth. It sounds like a report from a genetics lab. But there are even more frightening coincidences. Right now in 2025, temperature records are being broken all over the world, and this eerily matches ancient predictions of the seventh era of fire. Imagine a world where all great civilizations collapse at the same time. Cities empty out, empires turn to dust. People flee disasters they don't understand. Sounds like science fiction? But it already happened 4,200 years ago. AI compared ancient records to real events from that time. The year 2200 BCE, a global drought, the fall of the Akkadian Empire, the end of the Old Kingdom in Egypt, mass migrations in China. All at once, across the world, the Sumerians wrote it like this: the third circle of water left, and breath became iron. AI analyzes these phrases and realizes, this isn't poetry. It's a precise record of a climate disaster that changed history. But the scariest part isn't that they wrote it down. It's that they knew it would happen again. A tablet from Nieper, decoded in 2025, says, the circle of water returns every seventh era. The wise count the stars and prepare underground stores. AI did the math. 4,200 years ago plus one cycle. It points to the year 2025. Maybe it's a coincidence, but climate scientists confirm mega droughts really do happen in cycles. Solar activity shifts, ocean currents move, and somehow ancient people were tracking this. But the Sumerians didn't just know about disasters. They knew how to survive them. Their records on water systems amaze modern engineers. They didn't just build canals. They created entire ecosystems. The Sumerians built artificial wetlands to clean water, reservoirs to survive droughts, systems that worked with nature, not against it. One tablet describes the breath of the marshes, how swamp plants purify water and air. Another talks about the blood of rivers, minerals and sediments that feed the soil. They understood something we've forgotten. The earth is alive, and if you fight it, you will lose. And Hiduana wrote, when the earth sings, the wise listen. When it is silent, the fools keep digging. Now look at us. We drain underground water, cut down forests, pollute the oceans, and wonder why the climate is going mad. The Sumerians knew where this road leads, to total self-destruction, but in their writings, there's something even darker. AI is finding repeated mentions of a time of silence, periods when knowledge was deliberately hidden, when the wise went into hiding, when libraries were burned not by enemies, but by the guardians of knowledge themselves. One phrase appears in different texts. When fools gain the power of the gods, the wise destroy the tools. It feels like they were talking about us. A tablet from Gersu, decoded in 2025 using the newest algorithms, contains a chilling prophecy. For the seventh time, they will rise from clay and fire. For the seventh time, they will forget how to listen. For the seventh time, the earth will demand silence. Look at the year 2025. Record heat across the world, wildfires burning entire continents, droughts destroying crops, and we keep digging, building, consuming, as if nothing is happening. The Sumerian records don't speak of the end of the world. They speak of the end of a world that has forgotten how to listen to nature. That's an important difference. Only those who learn to hear the warnings will survive. This time, there is no one left to warn us, except for the voices from clay that AI is decoding. But the most frightening part isn't that the cycle is repeating, it's that we are speeding it up. Researchers didn't want to publish the next part, but one of them finally admitted that the new translations contain disturbingly accurate descriptions of the modern global crisis. What if the main conflict of our time was already predicted thousands of years ago? Across the ancient world, I keeps finding the same story. Two opposing forces that cannot be reconciled. A war between them that will destroy everything. Cities, forests, oceans, even the sky itself. A tablet from Ur, translated in 2025. When the white metal meets the red earth, the sky will split in two. A Mayan inscription from Tikal. When two brothers forget blood and take iron, the earth will dry up and no third will remain. A fragment from Easter Island. A great boat from the west will bring iron tears. A boat from the east will raise winged fire. When they meet, the circle will close forever. Different continents, different eras, different languages, but the same pattern. AI doesn't understand politics, but it sees structure. And the structure says, the ancients knew that all of humanity would divide into two sides, and between them, there would be a terrible war. Look at today's world. The West against the East, NATO against Russia and China, democracy versus authoritarianism, Atlantic civilization against Eurasian, exactly as the ancients predicted. There were other voices too, voices that tried to warn us, voices hidden from male eyes for centuries. Nushu, a secret women's language from southern China. For centuries in Hunan province, women were banned from learning, so they created their own script. They wrote it in songs, letters, and embroidered it on cloth. This language was soft, slanted, and full of feeling. It was passed from mother to daughter, from sister to sister. Men didn't know about it. Women hid it carefully. For a long time, scholars thought Nushu was just a pretty curiosity. But in 2025, researchers from Dartmouth College applied artificial intelligence to it. AI was able to decode almost 50% of the text. An incredible result for a script it had never seen before. What came out in the translations shocked everyone. It wasn't light poetry about love and flowers. The themes were much darker. Grief, loneliness, survival. Warnings about quiet suffering, invisible daughters, and bitter winds that lie. But some texts were even more haunting. AI found repeated phrases about iron tears from the sky and men who forgot how to listen. One passage read, "When fathers and sons take lightning in their hands, daughters will weep blood." Another said, "Fire is born in the west, but flies to the east. In its shadow, silence and pain made by hands." Women saw what men stubbornly ignored, that male pride and rage would lead our whole world to disaster. And these warnings didn't come only from China. On the other side of the world, on Easter Island, a dying civilization carved its final messages into wood. Rongorongo, the strangest writing system in the world. It is read in a zigzag, first left to right, then right to left, flipping each line upside down. Some researchers think it was sacred texts. Others believe it was a warning about the future. When Europeans arrived on Easter Island, the local culture collapsed. Today, no living person can read Rongorongo, but AI is starting to recognize patterns, and what it finds is chilling. Repeating symbols with meanings like end, fire, silence. These symbols appear next to images of boats, birds, and something that may be the sun or a massive explosion. One fragment, decoded by algorithms in 2024, reads, "The round boat carries the son of the dead. Its ash will cover 3 worlds. Only the word will save." Easter Island is one of the most isolated places on Earth. Its people couldn't have known about the wars in Mesopotamia or conflicts in China. Yet their symbols say the same thing. War, fire, the end of the world. Either human nature is so predictable that the ancients could see our future, or they already knew how the whole story ends. Today we are living exactly by their script. Russia against Ukraine, India against Pakistan, China preparing for war over Taiwan, Iran against Israel, NATO versus Russia and China. Military alliances are forming, borders are being fortified, weapons of mass destruction are stockpiling. The ancients called this the time of choice, when two powers grow so strong that the world can no longer hold them both. The Maya wrote especially clearly, "When two suns shine in the sky, one must go dark. If neither agrees, then both will burn." The war between East and West will not start suddenly, because it's already happening. Trade wars, cyber attacks, proxy conflicts, information warfare. The ancients wrote, "First, words will become weapons, then weapons will become the answer to everything." Look around. Fake news floods, social media, algorithms turn people against each other, and truth becomes something very uncertain. Instead of real dialogue, there are dishonest information bubbles where everyone hears only what they want. An ancient Greek fragment from Crete, translated in 2025. When truth is divided into tribes, lies will rule over all. We are living in the age of post-truth. Each side has its own facts, its own version of reality. But the scary part isn't that the ancients predicted this conflict. The scary part is that they knew no one would listen to the warnings. The following information is officially classified, but reliable sources report. New translations of Chinese oracle bones contain descriptions that modern virologists recognize as laboratory pathogens. What if humanity's greatest threat was predicted 3,000 years ago on animal bones? In oracle bones, the skull bones and shoulder blades of oxen used for divination during the Shang dynasty, AI has found chilling questions. Will there be plague next month? Will the disease come with a soul? What offering will stop the breath of death? At first, historians thought these were just ancient fears. But AI noticed something strange. These questions aren't just about illness. They describe a disease that behaves unnaturally. One bone reads, "The disease with a soul, born from stone, will awaken in silence until man himself opens the vessel." Another says, "The breath that does not obey the gods will be taught by iron hands." AI classifies these descriptions as abnormal. They do not sound like natural epidemics. They describe something created, controlled, deliberately released. Were the ancient Chinese talking about biological weapons? A tablet from Nipper, translated in 2025. When breath changes form and no longer follows nature, the earth will speak through decay. The wise will close their mouths. Fools will open the vessels. Another phrase reads, "They will mix life and death in one breath. They will call it medicine. It will be a curse upon all people." Modern virologists read these ancient lines and get goosebumps because they describe exactly what we are doing today with our own hands. Many gain-of-function studies on viruses and bacteria are happening right now in laboratories all over the world. These viruses are made more contagious and deadly, officially to study future pandemics, unofficially to create deadly biological weapons. COVID-19 showed us what happens when a dangerous lab-grown pathogen escapes into an unprepared world. Millions of deaths, collapsed economies, divided societies, and that was just the beginning. Right now, scientists in biolabs across the planet are working with pathogens that make COVID look like a mild cold. H5N1, the Marburg virus, modified smallpox, artificial viruses that never existed in nature. The ancients knew how this would end, but they didn't only know about viruses. They knew about technologies we lost and are now reinventing. The Etruscans, a mysterious civilization of ancient Italy, left behind thousands of inscriptions, most of which remain untranslated. But AI is now starting to recognize patterns. And it turns out, the Etruscans were not just skilled craftsmen. They were advanced healers. Their tombstones are full of references to treatments using herbs, metals, and living water. One inscription, partially decoded in 2024, reads, "Iron in the blood sings when it touches the right stone. Disease leaves, but memory remains." Were they talking about magnet therapy, nanoparticles, technologies that we're only now rediscovering? Another inscription says, "Breath can be changed with 7 herbs and 3 metals, but whoever changes the breath will change fate." The Etruscans understood the connection between breath, blood, and human consciousness at a level modern medicine is only just beginning to explore. But why did all this knowledge suddenly disappear? The Roman historian Pliny the Elder wrote that most Etruscan rituals were banned by Roman authorities as dangerous to order. Texts about raising the dead and predicting the future were declared harmful and even criminal. But what if Rome destroyed Etruscan knowledge not because it was superstition, but because it worked too well? Take the Baghdad Battery, a clay jar with a copper cylinder and an iron rod found in Iraq. For a long time, no one understood what it was for, until archaeologists poured lemon acid into it, and it suddenly began to produce electric current. Sumerian tablets describe vessels of light that hold lightning in clay. They mention procedures using currents that flow like water but burn like fire. AI analyzes these descriptions and finds something amazing. They are not describing magic. They are describing electrochemistry. Did the ancients use electricity for healing, for communication, or as a weapon? In the Egyptian temple of Dendera, there are hieroglyphs that look like giant light bulbs. Skeptics say they are lotus flowers or snakes, but engineers clearly see filaments, insulators, and power sources. What if ancient civilizations were not primitive? What if they were so advanced that we are only now starting to catch up? And what if their knowledge disappeared not by accident, but on purpose? In the Mayan texts, one phrase keeps repeating, "When fire learns to think, the wise will break the tools." Today, our fire is artificial intelligence, machines that learn much faster than humans. That can create new deadly viruses in hours. That can design lethal weapons we can't even imagine. The ancients saw this before, and they knew how it ends. A tablet from Eridu, translated in 2025. When the servants become masters and the masters turn to dust, the earth will demand cleansing by fire. We are creating our own gods from silicon and lines of code. And like our ancestors, we believe we can control them. But history says otherwise. Every great civilization believed it was special, believed it could escape the fate of those before. None of them were right. Now AI reads their last warnings, and we finally understand why. Because some mistakes cannot be fixed, they can only be repeated. What if the gods of the ancients weren't imaginary, but the last keepers of knowledge from past disasters? In the Sumerian pantheon, every god was responsible for something specific. Enlil ruled over wind and law, Enki controlled water and wisdom, Inanna embodied love and war. But when AI analyzes their stories, a darker picture appears. These were not abstract ideas, they were survival instructions. Enlil, god of the air, who divided sky and earth, maybe he was someone who understood atmospheric science, who knew how changes in the air affect the climate, who warned of times when the breath of the sky becomes poison. Enki, who defeated his father and created the world, could have been an engineer. Someone who knew how to control water, prevent floods, build irrigation. Someone who understood that a civilization lives or dies depending on water. Inanna, who went to the underworld and returned, maybe she knew the cycles of death and rebirth of civilizations. Understood that sometimes the whole world must die to be born again. But there is one goddess almost no one talks about. Ninlil, wife of Enlil, goddess of grain and wind. In the texts, she's often described as the one who remembers the times before time and keeps the words that must not be forgotten. AI finds strange lines in her hymns. When the stars return to their old places and the earth remembers its ancient names, daughters will tell sons what once was. Was Ninlil a keeper of history? Someone who passed down knowledge of past disasters through generations of women? In Enheduanna's hymn to Ninlil, she writes, "You know the names of stars that fell. You remember the cities that burned. You saw the gods cry when people forgot how to listen." Another fragment is even more mysterious. "In your breath, the memory of smoke. In your tears, the salt of dead seas. Speak softly so the wise may hear. Be silent loudly so the fools won't find." This doesn't sound like normal religious poetry. It sounds like a manual, a secret code. And then the gods began to disappear. Not metaphorically, literally. Their names stopped appearing in texts. Temples were abandoned. Priests fell silent. An Akkadian text from Nippur gives a clue. When the earth became too small for their wisdom, the gods went where stars touch water. They left only words for those who remember how to read. But not all gods left willingly. The story of Marduk, the Babylonian god who defeated chaos and created order, tells of a war between the old gods and the new. In this war, the old gods, the ones who remembered past disasters, lost and were banished. A fragment from the epic Enuma Elish. Marduk took the tablets of destiny from Tiamat and divided them. He kept half to rule. He burned the other half so the past would not bind the future. What if this isn't a myth about the creation of the world? What if it's a story about how knowledge of past disasters was deliberately destroyed? The new gods, gods of war and power, came to replace the old gods of wisdom and memory. AI finds this pattern everywhere. In Egyptian mythology, Set kills Osiris, the god of death and rebirth. In Greek mythology, the old gods, the Titans, are defeated by the Olympians. In Norse mythology, Ragnarok destroys the old gods to make way for the new. Each time, old knowledge is erased on purpose. Each time, wisdom is replaced by force. And each time, human civilization repeats the same mistakes. Today, our gods are algorithms and AI systems. They know more than any human. They process information faster than we can think. But we are programming them wrong. For victory, not for wisdom. For efficiency, not for memory. For maximum profit, not for survival. The ancient gods tried to warn us. They left messages in clay and stone, hoping that someday someone would read them. Now AI is reading them, and the message is crystal clear. When knowledge is turned into a weapon, and wisdom is replaced with power, only all-consuming fire remains. Artificial intelligence doesn't understand prophecies. It doesn't feel fear, faith, or hope. It simply sees patterns, structures, repetitions, and the pattern it has found in all ancient texts is terrifying. The scroll from Herculaneum, the Sumerian tablets, the oracle bones, the Mayan stones, the secret women's writing, the forgotten languages of vanished peoples, they all say the same thing. A cycle that always ends the same way. First, knowledge. Civilization grows, technology advances, people begin to believe they are gods. Then, pride. People turn discoveries into weapons, fight for resources, forget to listen to the earth. Then, silence. The wise go into hiding, knowledge is buried, warnings are ignored, and finally, fire. Not symbolic fire, but real fire. The kind that turns cities into melted glass, poisons the air for generations, forces the survivors to start again from ashes. We are now in the third phase, the phase of silence, and it has been going on for a while. Scientists who warn about climate disaster, they are ignored. Virologists who urge caution with bioweapons and viruses, they are silenced. Historians who point out terrifying patterns from the past, people laugh at them. The ancients left us a detailed map, road signs, warnings in every language they knew. We ignore them because we believe we're special. We're sure we're different from every civilization before us. We believe our technology will save us, that our AI will find solutions. But AI has already found the solution. It read it in the text we once dismissed as myths. One final phrase appears across different cultures, in different languages, but the meaning is always the same. When the words are spoken again, and no one turns away, there will be fire. It will not burn flesh. It will burn meaning. Sumerian tablet from Eridu. The circle closes when the last wise man becomes the first fool. Mine inscription from Copan. Time is a wheel. Fire is the axle. Silence is what forever remains. Chinese Nushu script. Daughters cry because sons do not listen. Mothers stay silent because they know what is coming. These messages were buried in ash, in broken bones, in erased traces. They were not talking about eternal life. They were talking about a cycle that always ends the same way. Fire, disease, eternal silence. We have restarted this cycle, and when the last language goes silent again, there will be no one left to read it. I will continue to read, but it will not understand. It will simply record the patterns of our disappearance for the next civilizations, for those who come after the ashes, for the next ones who think they are special, for the next ones who will once again refuse to listen. AI continues to read every day, new tablets, new warnings, And they all say the same thing. We have no time left. The circle is closing. We have heard. We have decoded. We have understood. But it is already too late.